Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Playing on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
all in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Playing on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. With Tony Marinaro.
55 seconds left in the penalty, a minute and 27 seconds left in regulation time. Boston 4, Montreal 3. Lafleur coming out rather gingerly on the right side. He gives it into Lemaire, back to Lafleur.
The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
You're in the fall!
Sports entertainment like no other.
Rejoint, on lui fait perdre la rondelle, une passe devant. Et c'est le dégagement et ce sera la victoire des Canadiens. Coupe Stanley pour les Canadiens. Le 23e de l'histoire.
You found the dogs! John, you found the dogs! He found the dogs! And all together, they worked a young team to the top. And now, a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup.
Brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. LaBita.tb. It's gonna be sick.
Marinaro on this Tuesday, May 2nd. It is 1 minute past 10 p.m. and the Dallas Stars have just scored again. All right, so Dallas up in their game versus the Seattle Kraken by a score of 1-0. When I say they scored again, because of course they keep on scoring, because here they are in the second round. And the Toronto Maple Leafs in their first game of round number 2 versus the Florida Panthers after eliminating the Tampa Bay Lightning. Well, the Leafs lost, all right? So the Leafs lose to the Florida Panthers on home ice, and everyone in Toronto is even keel again or back down to earth, maybe. Here I am, I'm saying this, but I'm the one who said that there was an open highway for the Toronto Maple Leafs to win the Stanley Cup, and I said that before, and by the way, one game is not going to make me change my mind, all right? Okay, I still believe it. I still believe it. 4-2 winners, the Florida Panthers over the Toronto Maple Leafs. And Matthew Tkachuk is a force to be reckoned with. And if the Leafs didn't figure it out watching Matthew Tkachuk versus the Boston Bruins in round 1, they certainly figured it out tonight. A big game awaits Toronto in game number 2. And I know that teams have lost the first 2 games of the series before. I mean, Toronto was down 3-1 versus Tampa and was able to come back in that series. So, you take a look at not 3-1. I'm talking about the Bruins were down 3-1. Listen, the Bruins were up 3-1. In the playoffs, anything can happen. Anybody can beat anybody. You can go down 1 game on losing home ice. You can go down 2 games, lose on home ice. You can be down 3-1 in a series. But you just get the feeling that the way this Florida Panthers team is playing and this rush of adrenaline that they have, they're on such a high that you just get the feeling that Toronto better win game 2. Because if they don't, there could be some trouble because Florida could be really inspired going back on home ice. But then again, we thought the same thing about the New York Rangers who won the first 2 in Jersey. Then they went back to New York and played at Madison Square Garden games 3 and games 4. And it didn't work out. So it really, really didn't work out. All right. Okay. So Marinaro, it is the Sick Podcast. And I'm with you until 11 p.m., of course. And the Sick Podcast is brought to you in part by Bittt at Tibi, brewed in Quebec and a winner of a dozen international awards. Bittt at Tibi offers quality microbrewery beers made with premium ingredients for everyone's taste. Bittt at Tibi, embrace your true nature. And also brought to you in part by Energy Transportation Group, a leading full-service logistics provider serving all of North America, driven to be different. And you know what? I had a chance to talk to the good people, Abdel and Vito, in particular, over at Excel Moto, the premier motorcycle and scooter dealership in Montreal for over 20 years. Their dealership carries 7 different motorcycle and scooter brands, number 1 Aprilia and Piaggio ambassadors for the last 5 years. Excel Moto, your ultimate destination and best customer service experience. Where are they? They're on Rue Paris, 5480 Paris, as a matter of fact. excelmoto.com. You have to check them out. As a matter of fact, if you go to their website as well, you're also going to see their phone number. It'll pop up right at the top of the right-hand screen on the right-hand side, and it is 514-738-6686. Nowhere else in Montreal should you be picking up a Piaggio or a Vespa scooter other than Excel Moto on Paré. Why? Because Tony Marinaro said so. That's why. We have a busy one today. Max Van Houtte is going to join us to talk Montreal Canadiens. Yes, Montreal Canadiens, because we have a lot to talk about. All right. He got it all started on his show. And then probably in about 25 minutes' time, Liam McGuire, the hockey trivia expert in the world, is going to join us because a lot of talk about Boston. A lot of Boston Bruins fans are going up on social media and they're talking about, the Bruins and all the records they reached during the regular season and how many wins they had and how many points they had and how many losses they had and all that stuff. Well, if there ever has been a hockey historian, of course, it's Liam McGuire. He's going to put things in perspective, compare that Bruins team with that 1976-77 Habs team, and we'll see how they compare. We'll bring in Max Van Houtte. Max, how you doing?
Tony, my man, I'm doing good, and you?
Hey, Hey, for whatever reason, and you've been on the show before, it must be that your lighting is very bright because I feel like the movie Ghost here. And I've never seen you
I look too white. Wait. Let me turn that down. Is that better?
That's a lot better. You look like you were in serious need of some foundation. I was going to send a makeup artist to your place.
Wait. Let me put a bit of orange in this and shit. I put the white balance automatic. That's no good. Let's put it a bit better. Is that better?
You're very sophisticated with what's going on over here. You're very sophisticated. All right. Okay.
Hey, man, I moved. Look at this. The beautiful home studio now. You
moved?
I did.
Oh, really?
I did.
So where did you move from and where did you move to?
I moved 700 meters away.
700 meters away. Wow.
Yeah, I moved from Plateau Mont-Royal to Plateau Mont-Royal. I moved in with my girlfriend. So we both had two small apartments. So we moved in a different one together.
Okay. That's fantastic. Well, thank you for taking this time away from your girlfriend to dedicate it to me and our sick army watching, our sick community. Everyone right now is watching live on YouTube. They're watching live on Twitter. They are watching live on Facebook. It is the Sick Podcast. We're going to be with you until 11 p.m., of course. And if you it, if you like what you're hearing, you like what you're seeing, like it, share it with your friends, and comment SICK, S-I-C-K, S-I-C-K, S-I-C-K. All right, okay. Earlier today on your radio show on BPM Spot, and I saw this on social media, the discussion of Alexis Lafreniere came up. For those who missed it, tell them what they missed, who brought it up, what was said, and give me your opinion.
Okay. So for those who don't know, so I host the show at 1:30 p.m. on BPM. And right before me is Big George Larac. For the duration of the playoff, George stays for 20 more minutes, and we have playoff debates. So it's mostly arguing about what's going to happen at night and, sports betting and stuff. But every day we start off with a more general hockey question to light things up. And so with Alexis Lafreniere's stats line during the playoff, which is an egg pretty much everywhere. He is -2 and has 9 shots, so not literally everywhere, but you know what I mean.
Yes.
And the fact that he's an RFA and that Kent Hughes said in the post-season press conference that he could be looking for another Kirby Dach-like situation. I plan on coming on the show and asking people, would you be okay with the Habs doing a Kirby Dach trade with Alexis Lafreniere? And then
it's a great question, by the way, because when the Canadiens acquired Kirby Dach, if I can, they acquired Kirby Dach at 21 years of age, a player who was drafted 3rd overall in his draft year. And in Alexis Lafreniere, you have a 21-year-old player who was drafted 1st overall in his draft year. And of course, add to that Alexis Lafreniere is from Saint-Eustache, Quebec. C'est un gars de chez nous. There's a lot of people that want him here. Max, the question's been brought up before, but the timing has never been better for a question like this.
Exactly.
Because I think it's very appropriate.
Exactly. And well, thank you for saying this, Tony, because coming from one of the GOAT of Montreal sports radio, I appreciate it. So anyway, I get to the station and, well, George did some George before me, which was to say that he would go as far as trading the number 6 pick for Alexis Lafreniere. So in the hypothetical case where the Habs draft 6. So I start the debate and I go, I have to talk to you first. I have to ask you about that number 6 pick. And so we have to debate about it.
Okay.
I don't agree personally with giving the
He
number 6 pick.
specifically said the number 6 pick, by the way.
Yeah,
he's not trading the first. He's not trading the second. If they keep
He is
fifth,
trading
he's
the
not
fifth,
trading
though.
that.
Yes, he said. So I asked him to precise. He said first and 2, no. He said 5, 6, or 7, yes. So
Wow.
5, he would do
Okay.
it too.
All right,
So I asked him,
okay.
and we debate, and to which I say, I'm willing to include something else, but also I bring in the discussion Pierre-Luc Dubois, because there is also these do not live in separate
It wouldn't
universe,
be another
right?
day in Quebec if we weren't talking about Pierre-Luc Dubois. I mean,
Exactly.
like he's the only
So-
hockey player who ever exists right now. I mean, that's
Exactly. So the conversation goes on and on. I would agree for a Kirby Dach-like trade. A Kirby Dach-like trade for me is not the number 5, is not the number 6, it's not the number 7. I am willing to take my bet on those pick instead of Alexis Lafreniere. I'm willing. But I do tell to him, say to
breaking
him,
news, the team in green that matches the same color as your cap, by the way, is now up by a score of 2-1 because the Kraken had tied it, and now they're up 2-1 for the Dallas Stars. Please continue. For the benefit of those watching, of course, who are watching full, like right now with both their eyes here and not watching TV, I wanted to give them an update. It's my way of saying thank you for watching me, and I got your back. I want to give you an update. So it's 2-1 Dallas. Go ahead, my man.
and I want to thank you because my iPad had fallen behind. It was still 1-0 for me here, and so now I put it live.
Wow.
But with that being said, so I told him, I said, okay, look, I will give you one thing. I will give the number 5 picks, maybe if and only if the Montreal Canadiens make a trade that makes sense. I'm not emptying the REER for Pierre-Luc Dubois, because apparently he wants to come next year. You come next year if you want, but I am willing, if the price is not too steep, to make him come 1 year early. So I said, if they do get Dubois, then I am willing to talk about that number 6 pick, because if you have Dubois, then it could be interesting to have a prospect that is further down his development, like Alexis Lafreniere, than the number 6 pick. And then I'm willing to talk, because then, you know what? That would at least be pretty damn interesting.
Yes, I understand all of that, okay? And I also understand that there's this thing in Montreal and in the province of Quebec to try and get as many Quebec-born players here. And I understand the wanting. I understand the arguments, but the only thing I always say is, let's put things in context. And it's not because they're a player from here that they should be an automatic. I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. I like Pierre-Luc Dubois as a player. I do. You cannot tell me there's not a lot of red flags, though. And I don't care who I talk with and how much they convince me that he was good in Columbus, or how much they convince me that he was the best player for the Jets in the series. I see red flags. For me, when a very reputable reporter and journalist like Aaron Portzline of The Athletic, who has covered the Columbus Blue Jackets for the longest time and was very close to John Tortorella, is very close to the organization, is very close to the management group, is very close to the players, when he tells me that Pierre-Luc Dubois wanted to be traded to the Montreal Canadiens and put in a trade request, and the Columbus Blue Jackets did not want to trade him. When he says that he's hearing that the Canadiens were about to make an offer sheet for Pierre-Luc Dubois, and the Columbus Blue Jackets in turn traded 2 players so that they can make room to match any offer sheet, but Dubois was upset about it. And because nothing was budging on the trade front, the Dubois went out there in one particular shift, which has made the rounds of the world and on YouTube.
Yeah.
And he completely dogged it for 20 seconds. He looked like the most disinterested person ever in the world, right? I've had ex-girlfriends that have looked more interested in me than he looked interested in being on that ice that night, okay? He looked like the most disinterested person in the world, okay?
Yeah, I remember.
When Aaron Portzline says, but the reason why he was doing it is because that was his response to the GM saying, you don't want to trade me? Well, in turn, this is what I'm going to do. I think that's a terrible attitude to have. I think it's a strategy that worked, obviously, because it was his last shift in Columbus and he was traded. But for me, Max, that's a huge red flag. Huge.
I get it. But at the same time, I don't know, man. I mean, Eli Manning didn't want to play for the freaking San Diego Chargers and made sure that he was traded. Um, I don't. You have so many players who do not want to play here of his caliber. So when there is one who apparently wants it that badly, I will get it. And I would not be saying this for a player who has not shown to me that he has the capability of Pierre-Luc Dubois, who has the size that he has, who has the skill set. It's definitely. I'm not sure if I have the right term here, but no, that's not right. I understand your red flags. I understand your red.
C'est un show bilingue là.
No, but I understand your red flags is what I mean to say. But to me, you know what? It's a calculated risk. It's a risk I am comfortable with, and it's a risk I am comfortable with at the right price.
At the right price, correct. Then it's a calculated risk at the right price. But what's the price here? By the way, Seattle has tied it up at 2. What's the price here?
I would be comfortable with Nick Suzuki contract plus, I don't know, just whatever the inflation has been since Nick Suzuki has signed his contract. So plus 2.5, plus 250,000 a year or whatever. I would be comfortable with that. But at the same time, what message do you send to Suzuki? Why is that? Why is that? They have the similar stats.
Because
very similar stats line.
Hold on a second. How did Nick Suzuki pick up his stats this year? You want to know how he picked them up?
Oh, yeah, with bad players. I get that.
He picked them up on a team that had 760 man games lost. He picked them up on a team that had 5 young players playing on defense. The Kraken have scored again, by the way. They're up by score 3-2. He picked them up on a team playing with 5 young defensemen. He picked them up on a team where Cole Caulfield was hurt and missed like half the season or whatever he missed. That the Sean Monahan was hurt, that Dvorak was hurt, that Gallagher was hurt, that everyone was hurt on this team. They were a team, the Montreal Canadiens, that a year ago had finished last overall, and this past season, of course, they finished 5th last. And Pierre-Luc Dubois picked it up in Winnipeg, much less pressure market than Montreal, much better team than Montreal, a playoff team contrary to Montreal. Playing with the likes of Scheifele, playing with the likes of Kyle Connor. I'm sorry to tell me that they have a similar stat line. Not the same thing for me at all. Now, you bring in a player who wanted out of Columbus and then wanted out of Winnipeg, who has the reputation of being a player who looks great when he's in the mood, looks awful when he's not in the mood. And you have the captain here, who, when I talked to Mike Matheson about Nick Suzuki, the first thing that comes out of his mouth is leader, who was an example for this team from start to finish, who brought it most nights, 90% of the season he brought it. His attitude is exemplary. And we're going to bring in Pierre-Luc Dubois from the outside. We're going to bring him in, and we're going to give him more money than Nick Suzuki. I'm sorry, it doesn't sit well with me.
Yeah, but that's just business. I mean, that is one of the weirdest things in sports, whereas if you sign your contract in 2019, you're going to get less money than if you sign it 2 years. That's why I'm saying same contract, but a little plus if this is what is needed. But with that being said, the presence of of Nick Suzuki is actually the type of thing that makes me more comfortable with Pierre-Luc Dubois. The Winnipeg Jets is one of the weirdest, and I'm being polite, franchise in the last few years. I would be so curious to be a fly in that room to know what exactly is the influence of Mark Scheifele and Blake Wheeler, who they strip of the captaincy. I will give you one thing. I don't think that Pierre-Luc Dubois is a leader. I do not think he is a leader, or at least not at this stage of his life. Being a leader is something that you can lead. Yeah, it can be learned.
Yeah,
it can be learned, but at this state, I agree that he is not a leader, and that is why I do not think he has made a difference with the Winnipeg Jets, because he had similar stat line back in Columbus with a less stacked team.
Yes.
If he comes in, and he does come in and plays with Caulfield and Suzuki, because personally, he comes in and he starts on the wing. He comes in and he starts, and don't get me started on having the 3 center men. In today's NHL, the best teams have 3 center men on 2 lines, and they have one of them on the wing. And when one gets injured, he gets back in the center. When the face-off, whatever. And on this line, yeah, I do think that he, Suzuki, Doc, whoever you put him with, they all get uplifted. They all get uplifted. You need more good players than you can have. And I think that, yes, he is the type of player that would accelerate the whole process.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Let's just say the Montreal Canadiens, they move up in the lottery and they get the second pick overall. And with that second pick, they decide to draft Adam Fantilli or Leo Carlson, 2 centermen, right?
Yeah.
So one or the other. Then you can have the 3 centermen, of course, with Suzuki, with Doc, and with Fantilli or Carlson. At that point, you still want to go out and make a deal for Dubois?
Probably, yeah.
No, now it's an obsession then. Willie
Nylander was a center before being in the NHL. Nobody talks about it because he doesn't need to be an NHLer.
So was
a center
Andre
in the
Markov.
NHL.
4-2 Seattle, by the way.
Yeah, this game. I did not expect that coming. I did not see that coming. But no, it's not. It's you know what? How does Team Canada mounts its team? They take 1,000 centermen and they put him on the wing. I don't care. You're much better in that situation than you were when you took Jonathan Drouin and you made him centerman while he was not. I prefer that. So, yeah, I have no problem. Pierre Dubois is a damn good left winger.
I'm going to tell you the problem. I'm going to tell you the problem. And by the way, I expected Seattle to do this. And by the way, I expected Florida to do this in game 1. I've seen this movie before. It's the carryover of a game 7. It's adrenaline. It's momentum. It's riding the wave.
Florida, I agree. I did not expect Jake Ottinger to let
Toronto didn't play. No,
and
neither did I. No, I didn't expect 4 goals in a period either. But Toronto didn't go to a game 7, and Dallas didn't go to a game 7. Yeah. Seattle and Florida, on the contrary, did. And so I expected this. All right. Mind you, this one's far from over. There's 4 minutes left in period number 1. But I'm going to tell you this. You said to me, Pierre-Luc Dubois is not a leader, he's a follower. And I said to you, I agree with you. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you what's going to happen because once again, 20 years I've been doing this. I've seen this movie before. Okay. I've seen this movie before. If Pierre-Luc Dubois comes here and you have a lot of your friends that work radio and television that are asking for him and asking for him and asking for him. And there's a certain sector of the fan base that is asking for him and asking for him and asking for him as well. Okay. I saw this movie before. It happened with Jonathan Drouin, and I was on that side. I had someone very close to the situation whispering in my ear, Jonathan Drouin really wants to come to Montreal. Spread the word. Yeah, spread the word. Make it happen, this, that. Jonathan, but I hear about Jonathan's attitude. No, it's not true. Jonathan's attitude, Cooper like this, Yzerman like that, Tampa Bay like this. Yeah, but you know what? Montreal, pressure city. No. Jonathan thrives on the pressure. He was playing for Halifax before that. He was playing for Lac St. Louis, and in Montreal, it would be great. It would bring out the best of Jonathan. He grew up like in the Montreal Canadiens, wants to play there, his family, his friends, wants to play, blah, 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 blah. 6 years later, Ashkefil finit, my friend. Ça finit mal. Ashkefil, we say. Okay, so now, here's the problem. You ready for this? I'm Max Van Hood. You come on the Sick Podcast on this Tuesday, May 2nd, and right now we're like 23 minutes into the show, and you say Pierre-Luc Dubois is not a leader, he's a follower. And I say, I agree with you. The second he puts on that Montreal Canadiens uniform and he plays his first game, there's going to be a lot of those people that we're talking about that are going to make him bigger than he is.
I understand.
Bigger than the team. And they're going to end up putting a lot of pressure on him. Pressure that, based on what we've seen thus far in his career, I'm not so sure he can take the pressure. I'm really not. There's a track record with this player, right? You remember where he was playing in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League? You remember?
Yeah. Cap-Breton, then Blainville-Boisbriand.
Correct. So Blainville acquired him down the stretch for their playoff,
particularly
right?
Good.
Well, he did pick up like 22 points in 19 games. It was a good playoff. But not at this point in his career. In the final, they got swept. Exactly. They got swept, and he based on what I remember, he did not have a very good final. Now,
he did have a good time with the Armada.
He puts up points. He always has. There's no doubt about it. This year's his best season in the National Hockey League with 63 points in 73 games. He put up 4 points in the playoffs in 5 games. But he's one of those players that you see the talent and then you don't see it for 3 or 4 games. You see the intensity on a couple of shifts in a couple of games, and then you don't see it for 2. Players like that drive you crazy. He's an upgrade on Josh Anderson, but he's not.
Oh, yeah, yes.
No, I understand that, but he's not. He falls into those same habits. You know what I mean? And
I
so
get
if
that.
you want to give him over $8 million,
I'm not giving him over 8.
Well, I mean, you told me $250,000 more than Suzuki, who makes $7.875 million.
Yeah, that's
I mean,
8. So that's 8
over 8.
flush. Wow. All right, I'm giving him 8 flush.
You're giving
Straight
him 8
up.
flush. C'est trop pour moi.
Here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. I get and you know, when we were talking about Lafreniere, two people right now, Jonathan Drouin is the plague right now. What I mean by this is like every mention of a Quebecer coming here is like Drouin 2.0, Drouin 2.0,
Yeah.
Drouin 2.0. Look, I think unfortunately Jonathan Drouin is a really unfortunate case. I don't think you're going to have many similar cases. Could be wrong on this. But on the point of Dubois,
the Quebecers, we get carried away. You want to know why, Max? And I'm sorry to cut you off. We think always with our heart and we don't think with our head. You remember last year, all of Quebec. Hey, as-tu vu la transaction Floride-Calgary? Les Panthères, ils pensaient à quoi? Juste, Jonathan Huberdeau, il est meilleur déjà 2 fois mieux que Matthew Tkachuk. Et en plus, ils ont donné Mackenzie Weegar. Hey, everyone that said that, ils ont l'air des caves aujourd'hui. Everyone looks stupid. Matthew Tkachuk, what we're seeing from Matthew Tkachuk.
You already know what I think
Jonathan
about him,
Huberdeau.
so.
Yeah, but listen, and by the way, it was the wrong coach for Jonathan Huberdeau, and I love Jonathan Huberdeau. I thought Jonathan Huberdeau was the MVP in the National Hockey League, not this past season, but the year before, obviously. I thought he was amazing, okay? Yeah. But it's just what I'm trying to say is we're very passionate people, us Quebecers. We love our Quebec-born players.
I get it.
And it's true, and it's great that we love them, but sometimes it clouds our judgment because we listen to our heart and not to our head.
I agree, but there are 2 things here. First, I completely agree with you. And as a guy who is 31 years old, so of the age of the players who are in the NHL right now, that is one thing that I often say. And it's not to disrespect any member of the media older than me, but I feel that sometimes they do forget that for our generation, putting on the CH does not represent the same things that it would have meant for somebody older for many reasons. One of them...
That's a great point. For those who saw the Flying Frenchman back in the day. Yeah.
Exactly. So I often say, and a great example is Philippe Danault. Philippe Danault could have had a contract. He tasted the Stanley Cup Finals with the Habs, and he still left for sunny California. And I'm not mad at him because I would have left for LA too. But for every Philippe Danault, you have a David Savard who decides to come here and says specifically in his press conference, I wanted to raise my kid in French. And it's not just the David Savard of this world. You had a great interview with freaking Mike Madison a few days ago.
Yeah.
To me, I remember his interview after the afternoon New York Islanders game where he made the play. I think it's Mike Hoffman who scored, but he made the play or whatever. He was the first star. He was the one doing the interview. And he was there with his beautiful accent being like, and I think I remember clearly him saying, I was one of you and I want you to know it. And I'm so proud of it. So for every Philippe Danault who decided to leave, for every Joe Drouin who couldn't handle it, when you have one who says he can take it, I am willing to say, come here and prove it. I am willing to say it.
I'll finish on this on Pierre-Luc Dubois. Once again, everyone knows he's a good player, but he's not a necessity. He would be a luxury.
I would agree with that.
Take a look at the Toronto Maple Leafs. They had 2 top centermen. They had Matthews and they had Tavares. What did they do? They went out to get Ryan O'Reilly. Now, in the year that they thought that they were a Ryan O'Reilly away from getting over to making that push in the playoffs. All right, okay.
I can agree with that.
Now, so George said that he would trade his 5th pick overall for Alexis Lafreniere.
He would.
Well, I'm going to get George on the podcast in a couple of days. And he and I are going to go, we're going to go head to head, my friend. We're going to go. And by the way, I always like Alexis Lafreniere, but And yeah, anyway, we'll tackle in a couple days, but I will say this. It's true that he put up zeros everywhere, but I find the fact that a lot of people are pointing the finger at Lafreniere's zeros when he was playing on a third line.
No, it's just dumb.
With less ice time than all the fat cats on that team.
Exactly.
The guys to point the finger at, if you want, the top three guys in no particular order are Panarin, Kane, and Tarasenko. Those are the guys.
You don't put Zibanejad in.
Zibanejad a little bit less. And by the way, let me explain. Okay, let me explain. Okay. Zibanejad is going head-to-head with either Jack Hughes or Nico Hischier.
Okay.
And so a little bit less, because on the guys that I talked to you about, Tarasenko, winger, Kane, winger, Panarin, winger. Less responsibilities, don't have to play a 200-foot game. And as a matter of fact, I'm sure the coach would be willing for others to do some of the defensive work if these guys would pick up points and score goals.
Agreed.
They were no-shows, man. Complete no-shows. So if I would say, look, Zibanejad comes in the second tier of players that you can point your finger at. But in the first tier, I got Kane, I got Tarasenko, and I got Panarin.
Look, Alexis Lafreniere is, and I was talking about this today. Can you remember in the 21st century, a first overall pick because the Rangers were in the bubble that year. The Rangers were actually a pretty good team, and they were probably the best team to have won the lottery these past years. So do you remember a first overall pick getting in the NHL in a similar situation as to what Lafreniere has, which is he's coming in as a third liner with freaking stud ahead of him, barely any power play opportunities, and that's the condition in which he has to develop. I can't think of anybody, to be honest. Somebody said Logan Patrick. He was 2 overall, but still.
Yeah, number 2 overall. His concussions actually did him in, poor guy.
Exactly. I don't feel like I can't think of anybody else. I can't think of anybody else who had to develop as a bottom 6 player on such a good team. And I don't know, like both Capo Caco and him so far have not delivered on the expectation. And I do wonder if there is part of it is because the Rangers are trying to win right now. They are trying to win. They're a bust this year, the Rangers.
Oh, big disappointment. Big disappointment. You know what? Why don't we do this? Because you asked the question, okay? This is going to be great, okay? Do we have Liam McGuire? We don't have Liam McGuire yet. We're trying to get Liam McGuire. Liam McGuire is supposed to join us. Let me check my phone to see if we have Liam McGuire. Give me 1 second here.
There's absolutely no problem, Tony. Let me entertain your fine viewers right now. How are you doing, people? No way you trade a top 7 pick for Lafreniere. I can agree with that.
All right. Okay. Let me see.
People arguing about who were worse for the Rangers during the playoff. That's actually pretty funny.
Okay. I think if we have Liam McGuire, I'd love to be able to bring Liam in here. Hold on a second, okay? Bear with me here. Guys at Master Control, the Sammy, and they're talking to him. He's coming on any second now, okay? You asked the question. In the meantime, I want to give a shout out to Ali and Vito from excelmoto.com for your Piaggio and your Vespa, the goat of scooters. No other place in Montreal you want to pick up your Piaggio or your Vespa scooter other than Excel Moto. All right. You asked the question. So Liam McGuire is probably listening to it right now. Ask it again. Your question was, in the history of the National Hockey League, or as far as you can remember.
When was the last 21st year?
Okay. So in the last 2 decades, when was the last time a first pick overall
had to develop
entered
in
the National Hockey League? Joe Thornton?
Were the Boston Bruins that good back then? I'm a bit too young to remember.
Well, listen, the guy who's going to tell us The guy who's going to tell us is obviously going to be Liam McGuire because he's the #1 hockey historian in the world.
Oh.
But the reason why I bring this up is, I think I know.
Who?
Vincent Lecavalier.
Were Tampa that good? They weren't good yet.
So Vincent Lecavalier, when he was drafted, you remember the owner said that he was going to be the next Michael Jordan of hockey, right?
Yeah.
But Jacques Demers put Vincent Lecavalier on the third line.
Oh, interesting.
On the third line that year.
But
now,
were Tampa a good hockey team?
They weren't a good hockey team. No, they were. No. I think their leading point getter was Darcy Tucker. I think he had Chris Gratton in front of him, but he still picked up more points. Joe Thornton. I'm trying to think now. Joe Thornton. When the Bruins drafted Joe Thornton, no, they weren't a good hockey team because they had the #1 pick overall, obviously, right?
Yeah, I don't think there was.
And they had Jason Allison.
Yeah,
ahead of him at center. And they had a couple of other players, but the Jason Allison was their #1 centerman at the time.
It's one thing to have guys ahead, but to have people ahead and being in the mood to win, that to me, that's the key. Like even like, I guess you could say Crosby, because Pittsburgh, as soon as
they won the lottery,
Crosby, but they turn into we're trying to win now that we have Sid, and they did. They won like 4 years later. I think they won in 09. They won the final in 08.
They were rebuilding when they had picked up Crosby, but 3 or 4 years later, they had picked up.
The difference, though,
they got Malkin #2 overall in the draft the year before.
Yeah, exactly. But the difference was that Crosby was Crosby. He was generational. It's like you and I, when we were talking earlier this year, I think it was back in January, we were saying that if you get Bedard, the rebuild is over. You're entering a different mindset because he's Bedard. Lafreniere is not that type of player. Crosby was that type of player. Sidney Crosby was the best hockey player in the world at 19 years old. Basic, 20 years old, I guess. So that's different. So even there, like Pittsburgh got into that mood because of Crosby. The Rangers are not getting in that mood because of Lafreniere. They're getting in that mood despite Lafreniere. I don't know if that.
Hold on a second. José Lavec, La Belle José, she says, stop your nonsense. The Rangers are never going to give up Lafreniere. I'm not so convinced.
Me neither.
I'm not there. I'm not in the Madison Square Garden, building, and I'm not in the offices of upper management. But I'm willing to bet that Alexis Lafreniere is not an untouchable on the New York Rangers. I'd be willing to bet that.
Just look at the cap. He's a restricted free agent. K. Miller is a restricted free agent who already deserve a big pay bump because he's a stud, by the way. Can do.
He's a stud. He's a stud.
Philippe Thiel contract is entering next year. I think it's just $2 million more, but that's that. So already there, Kendra Miller is signing for what? 5.5? I don't know. Will they give him bridge? Will they give him already 7 for a long time? I don't know. But just with those two players, you have somewhere from like 5 to 6 million up. So I don't know. Honestly, I don't know.
All right, let's bring in Liam McGuire. Hey, buddy.
Hey, buddy.
All right. So I had you on the podcast last week. I think most people know you by now. You are the premier hockey historian in the world. You're known as Mr. Trivia, the #1 trivia expert in the world. And you've been known to be that guy for a very, very long time. They have you at banquets. They have you at functions. You tour all over the world. People bring you in. They try and stump you. And more often than not, you cannot. I want to introduce you to Max Van Houtte of BPM Sports, who's a young pup. He's 31 years old. Max, I don't know if you know of Liam McGuire because you're a young pup, but he's been, once again, Mr. Trivia for probably how many years now, Liam?
Well, professionally 42, but you know what, Tony? Yesterday was the 48th anniversary. Hold on a second here now. Yeah, 48th anniversary of my first game ever at the Montreal Forum.
Wow. Okay. All right. Pretty cool. All right. Okay. 48th year.
Awesome.
48-year anniversary. That's pretty awesome. Max asked a question. Max got a very good radio show in Montreal, Liam, en français, in French, BPM Sports Radio 91.9 on your FM dial. He's on between 1:30 p.m. and 3:30 p.m. weekdays. And he asked a question. We're talking about Alexis Lafreniere. And you know, we both realized that, you know, he had an underwhelming playoff, but we said, you know what, there's others that should have more of the blame than he should, because he's 21, they're 30, they're 31. We're talking about Patrick Kane, we're talking about Panarin, we're talking about Tarasenko, the list goes on and on. And then Max asked a question. He said, Tony, in the last 20 years, can you think of a number one pick overall who went to a team that within a couple of years was already, you know, a playoff team and a legitimate contender, and he had, you know, he's fitting in on your third line? Because most players that are drafted first overall, they get drafted by a really, really bad team, and it takes them a really, really long time before they become competitive. Right. So I don't know if you got the question, but if you did, can you think of someone off the top of your head? Because if you can't, nobody can.
Well, 20 years, so you're going back to 03. I mean, even you just look at the Calder Trophy winners since that time, which of course are not the guys who went first overall typically, although I think 11 or 12 of them have since the universal draft started in 1967. But I mean, boy, you know, you got to write that list down and take a look at it, because guys like, you know, the Ovies and the Sids and whatnot just went right up to first line right away, first line minutes, first line impact. Yeah, Sid playing with Mario on some of the power play units in that first year. I mean, he had he was already going to be gifted, but that's okay, move away from him. So
well, hold on a second. Let's do this. He said 20 years. Okay. So let's actually start with, because let's go to 2002. Okay. Yeah. 2003 was that best draft. Man, you know what? We might even start 2000, the start of the 2000s. You remember the first pick overall in 2000?
Rick DiPietro.
DiPietro?
Correct. 2001?
Nash?
No.
Kovalchuk.
Nash was 2002.
Yeah.
Marc-Andre Fleury was 2003.
Right.
Ovechkin was 2004. Crosby was 2005. I remember these off the top of my head. 2006.
Eric Johnson.
I'd have to look it up, but yes, is Eric Johnson. 2007 is Patrick Kane. 2008 is Stamkos. 2009, I remember it. It's
Yeah. These guys, you're right. I mean, they all went to first lines pretty much right away, right?
Yeah. 2010 was Taylor Hall with the Edmonton Oilers.
That started the Edmonton run.
Yeah. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins.
Yes. And Yakupov was the year after. And the reason why I remember that is because the Edmonton Oilers had the first pick overall 3 years in a row.
Yeah.
3 years in a row and 4 out of 5.
Aaron Ekblad. McJesus. I guess you could say Austin Matthews, but Austin Matthews was a 40-goal scorer from the get-go. But he has never missed the playoff. Austin Matthews has never missed the playoff. So, but he was a 40-goal scorer right from the start of his career.
None of this is looking good on Lafreniere.
Rasmus Dahlin, Jack Hughes, Lafreniere, Owen Power, and Juraj Slafkowski.
Exactly. So nobody's ever been in that situation.
Yeah. I mean, in the last 20 years, and then even if you go back, you know, you could handpick some guys if you go back in the draft. But I mean, what's gone on in New York with Lafreniere, certainly I think everybody gave him a mulligan for the first year, and depending on how you want to grade how he was being coached, or how not coached, but his ice time or whatever. I mean, the Rangers, you know what? He played well in the playoffs last year, you know?
He did.
So it's, and I watched a lot of their games, and I mean, the guy took some great shots. I mean, now they got a rookie goalie, and it's got shades of, you know, whoever you want to say, go back to Dryden, Patrick Waugh, Cam Ward.
Ward.
You know, it's just these rookie goalies are stepping in, and he made some great saves on Lafreniere. I watch his work ethic. I saw people today on social media were referring to his weight and maybe he's slower. Boy, I don't know. I don't see that. He's always had a physical side to him. I mean, he came out of that World Junior where he played hurt, and him and Barrett and Hagen willed that team to gold medal. They're down 3-1 with 10 minutes to go against the Russians overseas. They come back. It just looked like they can't miss. I don't know anybody who wasn't going to take him number 1 overall. I don't know what's going on in New York. There's a number of different factors this year. More importantly, of all, really has highlighted the fact that maybe there's some shortcomings there, not off the ice, but in terms of the relationship with the coaching staff. I don't know. Yeah. But, Gerard Gallant, I mean, geez, I know him personally. I think that I hated when he left Montreal. I thought, oh my God,
I got a theory on Gerard Gallant and on the coaching, but I know you and I are going to talk about the Boston Bruins and the records that they set this season. Max, I so appreciate your time. We're going to talk Boston Bruins with Liam here. Thanks for joining me, and everybody watching, listen to Max Van Houtte at BPM Sport Radio, Monday through Friday, 1:30 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. Merci beaucoup, mon chum.
Tony, my man, always a pleasure. All Liam, right. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Merci, Max. Bonsoir.
Bonsoir. Il est parti.
Salut,
says my buddy Roger Brulotte, of course. Okay. I want to get to something. I have a theory on this, okay? And I spoke about this with Michel Bergeron today. Le Petit Tigre. He's in fine form, by the way. We work television together. It's always nice to see him. So we were talking about coaches in the National Hockey League, some of which are old school coaches, some of which are modern day coaches, right? Yeah. And we were talking about Gallant. We were talking about Lindy Ruff. And you know what he said to me? He said, Tony, you know what I think was a catalyst in that series? And it's not too many people that have said this, and it's not too many people who have brought up his name. Who do you think Michel Bergeron said was a catalyst in that series for the Devils?
Is he a defenseman?
He's assistant coach Andrew Brunette.
Oh,
and he said, Tony, Andrew Brunette is a modern day hockey thinker and a modern day hockey coach. You watched the way he had the Florida Panthers playing offense last year rocking and rolling. And he said he came to the Devils and he's helped Lindy Ruff with many facets of the game. And if you watch the Devils play hockey, it's not Lindy Ruff hockey. It resembles more Andrew Brunette hockey. Look, I don't know whether, the whole...
Oh, lost you, Tony. Probably my phone.
Yeah, no, that's okay. That's okay. You're coming in and out there, but we got you back. And listen, this is technology. It is what it is. And for the most part, it works. And every now and then there's, you live with it. It's okay, All right. In Boston, a lot of Bruins fans obviously are livid. They did not expect this, okay? Late in the regular season, they were chanting, "We want the cup," okay? Yeah. With the Bruins up in that series, and then Patrice Bergeron comes back, and then David Krejci comes back. I mean, no one expected them, especially not in Boston. No one expected them to lose. No. So today...
Oh, boy. Come on, man. Hang in there, kid.
What's that? All right. Talk to me about
all that we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio where you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, 'cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All that we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
right. Okay. So we're back. We had a technical difficulty there, but we're back. We're able to figure it out. Okay. It was probably even on my end. All right. So talk to me about the 76-77 Habs. Put things in context here for those who are talking about the Boston Bruins, 135 points, the best regular season team ever. Compare the two.
First of all, let's just back things up just 1 second. I want to make a comment about Andrew Brunette. That was outstanding input there because it's certainly a name I would not have thought of. I thought that Florida out again. I love that, although I'll give Paul Maurice a lot of credit. And Florida looked on
with I'm having a hard time. Do you hear me, Liam?
I can hear you, buddy, but I know we're breaking in and out. I'm in a small village south of Ottawa with not great internet connection. So
really? Okay, it's okay. Let's try it one more time, and if it doesn't work out, quickly on Andrew Brunette and compare the Canadians and the Bruins.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw a comment out there. You made a nice comment about something that not a lot of people know, and I just think that's a fair point because I thought he did an outstanding job in Florida, and I'll give credit where it's due. Paul Maurice did a great job in winning that first round against as a coach, and the team did it. But I mean, let's see what happens here going forward. But look, the 76-77 Habs are the fourth best, greatest winning percentage. Like the greatest winning percentage is the 29-30 Boston Bruins, who lost to the Montreal Canadiens in the playoffs. So, regular season is a regular season. But the 76-77 Habs, 160 games lost, 8 tied, 12, 377, 171 against, 132 points, lost 2 in the playoffs, won the Cup, second of 4 in a row, as we all know. Nobody's touching that. And if somebody wants to come along, play more games with the rules and everything else and beats it, but now we know.
So appreciate your contributions, but you're jamming up again. Right. Let's see if we can continue this at another point. All right,
you got it,
because you're in a small village. The internet signal is weak, like you said. All right, you got me. You're back, Liam. Liam, I think most people caught the basically what you were saying. You're right. Your internet signal is very, very low. You're cutting it out.
Don't worry about that.
It's technology. It happens. Don't worry about it. It's all good. Let's do this again sometime soon in the next week. If you can, you'll find yourself in another place with a better internet signal, and we'll continue this conversation. All right?
All right, buddy, you got it.
Maybe even tomorrow night when I actually got confirmation that I have a gentleman who's going to be joining me from the Sports Hub 98.5 in Boston tomorrow. Maybe we can get Liam back if he's going to have a better internet signal at that point. Thank you, Liam. Have a good one. I'm going to get to some questions, some of your questions coming in. Here we go. And some of the questions coming in are: fans expect excellence in Habsland. Well, that's just a comment. It's not a question. And yes, they do. Others coming in: Sammy Cavallaro on Master Control. If you want to put a couple of questions in, they won't trade him for the Florida pick. He was a first overall. All right. Okay. And we're talking about Alexis Lafreniere. Thunder God says Lafreniere can be helped by Marty St. Louis, but I don't see the New York Rangers giving him away cheap. He's not an untouchable. He's not an untouchable. I don't think he is. I really don't. Others coming in. And you can ask away. You can ask your questions here, and Sammy will bring a couple in. Reminding you, of course, that the Sick Podcast is brought to you in part by Bittt at Tibi, Embrace Your True Nature, and also by Energy Transportation Group, driven to be different. All right. So we'll see here. Others coming in. Yakupov was also a first overall. Alexandre Daigle, too, by the way. Those, unfortunately, were 2 firsts overall that just, their career didn't work out very well. It just didn't. When Alexandre Daigle was drafted first overall, I remember him making a comment like that he wanted to be he wanted to be drafted first overall because nobody remembers the second pick overall. And I think Chris Gratton was it Chris Gratton who was the second pick overall at that point? I think it was Daigle that made that comment that he absolutely wanted to be first overall. And you know what? It doesn't matter whether you're first overall or second overall or third overall. What matters is the kind of career that you're going to have. Or was it Pronger? It was Pronger that was the second overall. It was Chris Pronger that was second overall that year. And obviously Chris Pronger ended up having an awesome career, right? He was drafted by the Hartford Whalers, but he had a chance to play for several teams, and he was one of the biggest, toughest stay-at-home defensemen who can also carry the puck. He had a big shot from the point as well. This guy can hit like a truck, and so Daigle had a career that just, sometimes, and I don't want to say this, but I'll say it anyway. You just got the feeling that Alexander Daigle was always very, very good. But, you get the feeling that he loved the game because he was good more so than he actually loved it for any other reason. You know what I mean? And when it got to the biggest league in the world and you had to really, really work for it, at that point, it became difficult. All right, okay. How can Lafreniere develop when he's playing 8 to 10 minutes a game? Well, I think he was playing more than that, but the Rangers tried to go all in this year. They did. They tried to go all in. And when you try and go all in, you end up playing your veterans end up playing your kids. And that's what happens. And, if they can if Kane's going to be gone and Tarasenko's going to be gone, then there's increased responsibility for Lafreniere next year, and maybe he'll be better off. But look, he's still young in his career. He's 21 years old. It's true that it was zeros across the board, but I find it unfortunate that he's taking so much blame. And take a look at Tage Thompson, for example, right? 5 or 6 years later, some of these players, they just explode. Take a look at Jack Hughes' numbers, getting better and better every year. He's an absolute superstar now in the National Hockey League. I wouldn't throw in the towel on Alexis Lafreniere. What would you trade to get Lafreniere? This coming in from Bobby. What would I trade to get Lafreniere? Well, I wouldn't trade the 5th pick overall to get Lafreniere. I wouldn't. And you know what? If you go by the logic that, a better draft pick 1 year versus another draft pick, you win the trade, don't forget, when Marc Bergevin traded Sergachev, who was drafted 9th, to get Drouin, who 3 years before was drafted 3rd, Montreal thought for sure they won the trade because Jonathan Drouin was a 3rd pick overall and Sergachev was a 9th pick overall for sure. Michel Therrien back then, was asked, even later on when he was no longer coaching the Canadiens, he always thought it was going to be a good deal for the Canadiens because you're looking at 3rd versus 9th. You can't look at it that way because some players, they're not as good as where they were drafted. Take a look at, for example, Lafreniere, right? Lafreniere was drafted 1st and Stützle was drafted 3rd. Well, knowing what you know right now, who should have been drafted 1st between the two players? Obviously, Stützle should have been drafted before Lafreniere. And there are so many more examples of this, by the way. Take a look at Nick Suzuki, okay? Nick Suzuki in his draft year, he was drafted 13th overall, 13th by the Vegas Golden Knights. That year, Nico Hischier was drafted 1st. Nolan Patrick was drafted 2nd. You look at Nolan Patrick now, and you look at Nick Suzuki, and Nolan Patrick is with he hasn't played. I mean, his last year was with the Vegas Golden Knights. I mean, but his career ended because of concussions. Okay, I got you, but I'll give you other examples, all right? Cody Glass. Vegas drafted Cody Glass 6th overall. And then they drafted Suzuki 13th overall. So when you take a look at that draft, Nico Hischier, Nolan Patrick, Miro Heiskanen, Cale Makar, Elias Pettersson, and Nick Suzuki is 13th. Nick Suzuki can easily be top 5 in that draft. So, those are things that you have to be aware of. Those are definitely things you have to be aware of. Others coming in. Depends on a good development club. Sad story that Patrick Kidd says, Bobby. You're absolutely right. A very sad story. Unfortunately, concussions, man, that's the injury that you want to avoid. A leg injury, you can end up rehabilitating the leg. A groin injury, you can rehabilitate that. Other injuries, a shoulder injury, you could rehabilitate that. You can rehabilitate them. You can do the physio, you can do the osteo, you can do the acupuncture, you can do the fascia stretch therapy that my buddy Charlie does over at Optimal Stretch. You can do a lot of things. The head, once the brain is bruised, very, very difficult to rehabilitate that. You can't. And by the way, and I read this last week, I'm not sure if it's in Ontario, but concussions, often you'll hear doctors say, okay, you know what, or teams say he can come back after a week, he's got the green light, he comes back. There are some cities, there are some provinces now that are making it mandatory. You suffer a concussion, you're out for a month. That is really, really good news, because you know what? It's not worth it to come back early and then you bruise your brain again. Because when you start bruising your brain 3, 4, 5 times, let me tell you, the rest of your life is affected. Never mind your hockey career, never mind your sports career. Careers, they average 4 or 5 years. Professional athletes end up averaging, they end up retiring probably at an average age of 25, 26, whatever it is. It's not everyone that plays until 35 years old. But even those that do, you have to be able to do something else for the rest of your life. Not everyone makes money, But if your brain's not working, is it worth it? It's not worth it. Danick Martel of the Laval Rocket, who's got, he has that dream. The dream is to play in the National Hockey League. The dream is to play for the Montreal Canadiens. The concussions are adding up. Jean-François Houtte said at the end of the year, he had a conversation with him. It was like a father to son conversation. When asked, if he thinks Danick Martel is going to come back to play hockey, he said, I don't think so. I really don't. It is 11:02. Tomorrow night, I have, back in the radio day, I had quite the discussions with the people over at the Sports Hub 98.5 in Boston. I called on, and also with the folks over at WEEI in Boston. I was going back and forth with both radio stations. I called on one gentleman with one of those radio stations. He was busy tonight. He told me he's going to join me tomorrow night. So be back, same time, same place. And we'll make sure we have the whole internet thing figured out. It happens every now and then, folks. There are some podcasts where it won't freeze, not for a second, not for 10 seconds, not for a minute. Those podcasts, they don't go live. They record, they edit everything out. And should they freeze, they take it all out, this, that. We do things. I like to do live radio, and I like to do live podcasts, where I have the reaction from all of you. I get the community, I get the army involved, the sick community, the sick army. You ask questions, you have a chance to communicate with each other, you have a chance to chat with each other, you have a chance to get to know each other. It's live. That's what it is. And I want to do things live. I want to do it for you. I want to do it live, so you can give me immediate reaction to what I'm saying, so that you can call in when I'm saying something, so that you can text, so that you can chat. You can do it on YouTube. You can do it on Facebook. You can do it on Twitter. And that's why it's a sick podcast. Special thanks once again to everyone supporting the podcast, to Mike Cinquino and Sean Gerard over at Energy Transportation Group, to my buddies Aldo Geloso, Ted Farace, and staff over at the Geloso Beverage Group, distributors of La Bittt at Tibi, and to my friends Ali and Vito at Excel Moto, excelmoto.com. For Agnello and Sammy, back at Master Control at our headquarters in Kirkland, they're Cavallaro, I'm Marinaro. Tomorrow night, same time, same place.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow The Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. La Vida TB. Embrace your true nature.